This program on women in science, technology, and business has been brought to you by Zoho Corporation.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kamla. My guest today is Suzanne Frey. She's the Director of Security, Trust and Privacy for Google Apps and Engineering at Google. I had to actually look down at my card so that I didn't get it wrong, Suzanne.
It's very long, so feel free to shorten.
No, how would you shorten it?
Trust. If I really had to wrap it up into one word, it's really about the trust that we have to engender and earn with our users, whether they're consumers or they're enterprises or governments or even, school boards and educators.
So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So how did you get involved at Google?
I'm a citizen of the globe, so I really definitely I was so honored to get the offer from Google, and it's such a privilege to be there. I really do count my blessings every day. How I got there, that's a long and circuitous route, but in brief, I was working in Brazil. I'd actually just started my own company, had my first contract. I got a call from Google, and I was hesitant. I was like, oh, big company, they already have 10,000 employees. But I figured, I love the mission of Google, what they're about, serving information to the world. And it was very hard to not at least entertain the idea of coming out. And so I flew up for interviews. I loved the people I met, and it just became quite obvious that the right thing to do was move across the country and take this opportunity at Google. And I started in our technical infrastructure division, so I started at the foundation. So many people don't realize we build our own infrastructure. So I had the opportunity to work with some of the greatest minds in infrastructure, and then I have been on a journey ever since then within Google.
What is it that you learn about Google every day in terms of using Google? Because I think I'm stuck like 15 years ago. I just do a simple search. Is there anything else that we can learn on how to use Google for search, for instance? Any tips that you have learned?
Oh, sure. Well, I think one of the most exciting things in transition phases that we're all part of in the tech industry right now is that transition from, initiating a search to someone else already knowing what we're going to search and assisting us with that process. For example, when I came here today, my phone let me know, you need to leave now in order to arrive on time. It's all in my calendar. I was coming to interview with you, and it knew the traffic patterns and gave me a pretty good statistical sampling of the time I needed to get here. And I just love that. I love the fact that we are moving to a machine learning culture that helps us be more productive every single day.
But if I was the devil's advocate, I could turn around and say, I'm a little concerned that Google knows everything about me. How would you answer that?
I would answer it in that we provide a ton of controls to allow you to turn things on and off. If there's something that makes you uncomfortable, for example, timeline on your maps function, then you can turn that off.
How do we turn that off?
You go to your account panel, and you can go in, and there's lots of settings to take a look at that. And we focus a lot on that. And I'd say we've been on a journey, Google, over time too, because there's obviously one side of the argument that says, all of this is just wonderful, advancing mankind's productivity, and to have that information actually makes the world better. And of course, there's the individual's perspective, which we value greatly and have come to learn more and more. And it differs all over the world, frankly, in terms of how sensitive information collection is. So we've come to realize that we have to provide those controls. They're essential for our users' trust. And honestly, most of the world does trust us and does want those features. And we're really, we're in a partnership with our users to help improve assistive technology, for example.
What keeps you awake at night?
Not just Google, but some of the great tech giants here in the Bay Area and around the world. We are pioneering. We are going places no one has gone before. We are developing incredible products at a speed that far outpaces legislation and regulations. And I'm well aware that we need to be prudent and sage and look inside ourselves and say, what's the right thing to do now? Because there are no precedents for what we're doing. And I want to make the right decision such that longer term, we're not bound by kind of draconian legislation that doesn't allow us to take the right next steps and I know this sounds lofty, but the right next steps for mankind around the world, because we have been so central to an innovation ecosystem around the world. If you think about AdWords, for example, so many companies have been born and thrived because of AdWords. And had we not taken and made the right decisions along that path, we wouldn't be where we are today, nor would millions of other companies.
How has your perspective of the world changed after you came to Google? You're a well-traveled person before that.
It's a good question. I'm not sure if it changed much.
From the technical innovation perspective, because you just said, because there are certain things that regulations need to be taken care of. That's where I'm coming from that kind of a legal framework, if you will.
I think I've become much more attuned, obviously. It's inherent to my current role around privacy and concerns of users, and seeing the cultural differences around privacy. They do vary greatly, and it's something that I wasn't well attuned to before and thoroughly understand now.
So there's cultural context to privacy. You're also involved at Google at, there's some sort of an internal thing to promote women. There's an organization, what is it called?
Sure, and I'll wordsmith that a little bit to, basically advance sort of the state of women in leadership, and to also give back, within our own ecosystem and outside of Google. When I joined Google, which was almost a decade ago, I noticed, and I was not unique to Google, but the percentage of women in the most senior leadership was not ideal, nor is it really anywhere in any tech company. And I noticed that during our sort of weekly TGIF sessions, which are well known, they're a time that once a week, Sergey, Larry, Sundar, other leaders of the company come together to discuss a recent highlight, a recent advance. But there's an open forum for questions and an open mic, including a moderated sort of online forum where people can vote. And I noticed the individuals who stepped up to the mic and asked astute questions, who happened to be known by Eric or Larry or Sergey. And I was like, those are good questions. That seems like a savvy leader. Let me reach out. And, it's as simple as scheduling a lunch and saying, hey, you know what, I really liked what you had to say, and you had to say, and by the way, what do you guys think about this given problem? Is it a problem? I'm new to the company. And, I got really lucky that, I partnered with Kristen Rinke, who's Vice President of Finance at Google, and we reached out to Vice President of Sales, Sukhinder Singh Cassidy, who's well known now and in the Valley.
For the board list.
For the board list, yes. And she became our sponsor. And, there was a Women at community that was started by Eileen Naughton and Sheryl Sandberg. It was largely bringing in authors or known speakers. And I think really the collision of sort of bringing those two efforts together, the Women's Leadership Initiative along with our Women at group. We've now formed the largest employee resource group at Google. And we have really been a catalyst for driving like diversity stats and ensuring that we publish those and we review them. And we take a look at, are there things we can do to change the shape of the pipeline? And that's really what we do. We're trying to change the shape of the pipeline by working with junior high school students in computer science and high school students in computer science, and working with our sort of mid-management tier and trying to help and provide mentorship to them along the way.
So it's a global women leadership organization.
Yes.
That's the one that I was struggling with. What was, I think a couple of years ago, quite a few Silicon Valley-based companies published their diversity report.
Yes.
What was Google's diversity report like?
We were the first to publish, and we were proud to do that, as so many followed. I think, as I've mentioned, I don't think there's a tech company in the Bay Area who is hitting the ideal 50-50.
What needs to be done? What needs to be done to improve that?
I think change the pipeline, and that's a long-term process. Unfortunately, we do see extensive evidence throughout the educational institutions and the like of bias in the classrooms, and also just sort of nudging young girls away from tech fields very unconsciously or subconsciously. So I think we really need to invest in understanding teacher behavior, bias in what gets presented or what opportunities get presented, and provide role models. I mean, role models are essential along the way.
How are you providing those role models?
Doing a couple of things. We have a number of outreach. We certainly work with organizations like Girls Who Code, and we do a number of outreach activities, whether they're national in nature, like Light the White House Christmas Tree. We have the Women Tech Bakers organization that we use as an outlet to reach out. And our Women At group is actually a global organization with chapters placed all over the world. So we'll have the group in Argentina, for example, work with women who are starting internet cafes and help them understand how to get up and running, how to get the tech up and running, how to get their Wi-Fi right. I mean, like very, very basic and simple things. And by starting that ecosystem, you've got a local role model who owns the local Wi-Fi cafe. And you go down there, maybe you do your homework after school, and you start this sort of ecosystem going that is like, wow, you start to see more role models and you start to get more opportunities. And they seem small, but when you do that all over the globe, it's already yielding some results, and we've already started to see an uptick in our stats, which is wonderful.
Why did you become passionate about advancing girls in tech?
I think because I'm kind of an anomaly in the tech world.
Tell me, how are you an anomaly?
I'm a liberal arts major, which I don't go telling everyone all the time. My education is very rooted in liberal arts. But while I was in college, I staffed our computing help desks because this was sort of at the advent. It was just like I had a BitNet email account to mail another friend of mine who was attending another university. And it was like, oh, this is really neat, email. This
the client
is so
server.
Cool, yeah. And there were all sorts of technology just emerging, and people would sit on IRC chat conversations, and I was like, this is amazing what's starting to happen. So I spent a lot of my just leisure time, getting to know this emerging web and getting to know the products and the scalability and finding answers on Archie. And it was an amazing time for me. So I was able to sort of keep all of my aspirations rooted in liberal arts and experiences. But at the same time, I was funding my own personal expenses by running our computing and faculty staff help desks. So ultimately, I was helping the faculty write Excel macros and build small databases and access and things like that.
And you were a liberal arts major.
Yes.
And
yes.
you created macros.
Oh, sure.
I never knew how to create macros. Let me
well, if you have 5 minutes after this,
I didn't have the proclivity to learn macros.
Oh, see, that's the thing. You have to say that's actually not true. But I do think that becomes a myth. I think it becomes and it lives on, and it lives on in others. It's so easy. It's just that probably it's like a foreign language to so many people.
You speak more than one language?
I do. I have, I would say, beginner to intermediate in French and Spanish. And I speak the tiniest little bit of Hindi.
You speak Hindi? Okay, we'll come to it. No. Okay, no, you're right. We take cover under the fact that at the same time I learned the Unix file structure. So it's not like you can't. It's just I think you need to sometimes have a patient teacher.
Yes.
Because we think we have dumb questions.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
So you need a safe place to ask those questions.
Absolutely. I mean, just last night I was talking with a number of our interns, and I was with a group of young men who all have done exceptional work during their internship, but they were talking about their first CS classes, and they were saying how hard they were. And I was like, that is refreshing, because so often, and I don't mean to stereotype, but perhaps this does sound like one, that you don't hear the men in the room saying how hard things are, but you often hear the women. And I think something's got to change to let the women know you've got to work through it. It's hard for everybody. It is not easy for everybody, but I will tell you macros are pretty easy.
Okay. What did you think you would become when you were a kid? What did you think you'd become when you'd grow old?
My first aspiration was astronaut.
Really?
For sure. And as it emerged, I mean, I really became quite interested in chemistry. And that's chemistry and English literature were my two hopeful majors when I entered school. But I ended up psychology and English with an emphasis on psychobiology.
And this was?
And that's undergraduate.
No, which college?
Oh, that was at Wellesley College.
It's a private school.
Yeah.
And only
Yes.
in such a school would you have psychology and what did you call it? Bio what?
Psychobiology, an emphasis on psychobiology.
Psychobiology.
Yes.
How did you get into Wellesley?
I guess there's the question of how did I get into it and how did I even think about going there? And I guess I'll start maybe with the latter question. I am very lucky that I have two great parents. My father's no longer with us, but who all along really emphasized education. Now, my dad didn't go to college, didn't finish college, and my mom didn't go to college, but they both knew the value.
Can I just interrupt you?
Yeah.
Why did he not go to college?
He went into the Coast Guard, and this is during the Vietnam era, and afterward, he did take classes at college. He also was having to fund himself, and he worked at a gas station during that time, and he was repairing someone's car and providing apparently exceptional service along the way. And the gentleman whose car he was repairing worked at IBM and really liked my dad's attitude toward customer service and his mechanical aptitude, and offered him a job at IBM. And from there on, my father was extremely busy at IBM, all the way from sort of being a field mechanic for copiers and typewriters, and then ultimately working his way up and through management. And so that's basically why he didn't go to college, was the need sort of started to disappear, although I think throughout his life he really wishes he would have finished.
So you decided to go to
Yeah.
Wellesley because?
So I was always looking at what schools I was going to go to, and I knew in my heart of hearts I wanted to go to a smaller school.
Right.
I think I liked the more intimate learning experience. I'm an introvert. I think I didn't need the big party atmosphere. At least that's what a big university felt like to me. So I scanned. I was looking at everywhere, and I made some uncommon choices about where I'd like to go. But Wellesley was inspired.
So tell us, what were those uncommon choices?
Well, let me go back to why Wellesley became my choice. I was actually having sinus surgery as a sophomore in high school, and the surgeon had a daughter at Wellesley, and he was talking to me about school and where I was thinking about going to college, and he just interrupted and said, "Have you thought about Wellesley?" And my mother, of course, was like, "Oh, Wellesley, wouldn't that be wonderful?" And then I was like, "Well, I'm not sure." But the more I thought about it, and I wrote, and at least you used to get those thick curriculum books.
Yes.
And I remember sitting there and looking at, the philosophy classes and, the literature classes and the chemistry classes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, these are, that was so well written and so exciting and exactly what I wanted to do. So
the surgeon in some ways reignited
Yes.
your, should I say, ambition?
Yes, I would say so. And it was so serendipitous, really, when you think about it.
And did you get a scholarship to go to college?
I had to get a scholarship to go to college. I mean, there was no question about that. So, one of the things, and I think back, and whenever I talk to someone and give advice about, if they're in high school or the like, or I hear someone say, well, I don't have the money to go to X, I remind them that most of the best schools have a need-blind admissions policy, and Wellesley is one of the best, and actually has an exceptional endowment as well. And look at those schools and find out, because they'll take care of you. If you can get in, focus on getting in.
Oh, not the finance.
And don't focus on the financials. Too many young kids focus on the financials. They have great aptitude, and there's also other avenues for funding. In my case, IBM actually sponsored through a Watson Fellowship or scholarship as well, so that helped a lot. And I just needed to really focus on my sort of daily expenses, which is why I worked in the computing lab.
So let's complete that equation. So if a young person says that they don't have the money to go to school, you said focus on getting into the college.
Yes.
How do you then solve the second part of the equation? Where do they get the money? How do they apply for financial aid?
So normally I can't speak for every school
No,
or how
yeah.
it works, but there is a separate application process for that. And it involves paperwork. And I do remember sort of being frustrated by the paperwork and the like, and my parents being frustrated by it too. But it's paperwork, and it's your future.
You just have to plow through it.
You have to plow through it. And I encourage everyone, look at schools. If you have the drive and you really care about going to a great school, look at those schools that have need blind policies.
So there you were, I don't know, 20 years old or 21. You graduate
Yeah.
from Wellesley. What did you do next?
I graduated during a recession, which made it all the more interesting. And I'm in Boston. I'm in a big city, and I ended up taking a job at a startup. This was a while ago. This was before startup was really a term, with a gentleman who had started a research journal on, of all things, printers.
Well, it was a big deal
So,
then.
It was a big deal. So, with every printer that would be produced by Lexmark or HP, et cetera, we would do detailed analysis on that printer and publish that journal to industry. And he had a subscription, both in hard copy as well as a database subscription. So I helped to build the database for him at the time. I did a lot of some data entry, and I did a lot of technical writing on these printers. Everything dot matrix, and wax, all the way through to laser.
Those were the
That
days.
was the start. So that was the start. And, that company has gone on to become a sizable company. And I was there for a couple of years.
And then?
Then I took a tour into an actuarial company. Again, very random. I actually reached out to a headhunter at that point in time and landed there. It was a great experience. Continued to do a lot of technical writing, but also a lot of quantitative writing for the actuarial side.
You good in math?
I think I'm decent at math. Yes.
Well, if you can solve chemistry equation, you're good.
Well, I'm lucky. I got to do advanced math in high school, and actually spent some time in college courses math early on too.
So then your second job was working for this company.
Actuarial firm.
Actuarial. And
Yes.
then how did you get in the tech?
So I was at the actuarial firm 1.5, 2 years, something like that. And I knew that I wanted to do more, and I really wanted to travel. I didn't have the luxury of doing like junior year abroad, and so everyone looked at me like I was crazy. You don't use travel as the
you were
reason.
not crazy. You probably remembered your classmates going for the...
Yes, I did remember that, and I just realized I had not really seen much of the world yet. And so I used that as one of the primary criteria for finding my next job. And I, again, through opening many doors and channels and many conversations, I ended up, again, through a great headhunter, Bob Norton. I have to mention him because he saw something in me and introduced me to a rising startup in the Boston area that did very back-end and not obvious work in enterprise telecom billing systems.
Which was a huge deal then, the billing system.
Huge deal. This was right around the time of deregulation. This is the time of the rise of the mobile phone. This was the time where telecoms were going, oh my gosh, we have brand new inventory to manage. We have brand new things we need to rate and bill and collect. We have wireline, and we have these data-based phones, and it was an absolute explosion all over the world. So I got the chance to go in and do deployments for them, ultimately help with system architecture, manage some software engineering.
And so you learned everything on the job.
I learned everything on the job. And, again, there I was lucky. They took a bet on me. They said, you're the first non-MBA, non-engineer we've hired into our services division. And, I had great mentors there. And, I think about Chevy, one of my greatest mentors. And, he was patient with me and taught me an awful lot. His name was Chevy.
Chevy.
Impachelvin.
Okay. So this was Keenan Systems that
This
you
was
worked.
Keenan Systems, yeah.
Then how did you end up at MIT doing an MBA?
Yeah. So Keenan Sahin, the founder, also someone I looked up to greatly and gave great advice along the way, was formerly a professor at MIT at the Sloan School, and he taught in the Sloan Fellows Program, which is a niche program at Sloan, and it was started in the 40s, basically to train executives, but it required everyone take a year off of work, go double down, do a full MBA program and advanced leadership training for a 13-month period. And most of the individuals are sponsored through those programs, and by their companies, they go back to work and then rise the ranks. I was intrigued by the Sloan Fellows program, partially because of Keenan and partially because of the reading I'd done outside. And after 10 years at Keenan Systems, after seeing the world, going through some of the hardest challenges I've been through, helping to build the company to quite a substantial size, I said, I want to take a break. I'm going to go back to school. And I was lucky enough to get accepted to the Sloan Fellows program and spend 13 months getting my MBA, as well as all the advanced stuff that comes with the Fellows program. What an incredible experience.
The one question I didn't ask you is, you're on the board of Motley Fools,
Yes.
which is a privately held company.
Yes, it is.
How did that happen? Did you always want to be on the board of a company?
I have always wanted to be on a board, and these are not easy things. There's very few roles open. Doesn't matter anywhere, because they tend to be lifetime appointments, provided you do a good job.
Okay.
And so I opened a lot of doors. Wellesley has certain initiatives. I'm lucky to serve on the Business Leadership Council at Wellesley. Stanford Women on Boards also has initiatives, and I was lucky enough to connect with them. Even though I'm not an alum, they also opened a number of doors. So I was able to get interviews. Google is very supportive. I'm so lucky to be at a company that's supportive of this as well. And so I got lucky, but I also tried many, many times, and I have landed a really exceptional match. I love the Motley Fool, and we're doing everything, like also how to focus on how to improve sort of the percentage of women that actually actively invest. So it's been a tremendous experience, and I'm so grateful to exercise muscles outside my normal day job at Google, which also I love.
Suzanne, what a story. What a story. How many countries have you traveled?
Oh, traveled probably in the 50s, 60s at this point.
She's traveled 50, 60 countries. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time.
Kamla, thank you.
And thank you for watching. Suzanne has traveled 50, 60 countries. I've only traveled 4 or 5. Hopefully, I'll catch up with you in my lifetime. Thank you for watching. We'll be back again with another episode. And if you missed any of our shows, you can catch them on our YouTube channel.
This program on women in science, technology, and business has been brought to you by Zoho Corporation.